off again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on that.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Wednesday night, which means it is retro night, and as always we look back at games between Newcastle United and another team, and tonight it is Bolton Wanderers, and we have all your usual favourites, including celebrity fans, which always causes a chuckle, and the players that played for both teams, and then at the end the lads pick a team of combined Newcastle United and Bolton players. So plenty to get our teeth into as always, and as always we're joined by the illustrious panel of George and Neil Mitchell, Stu Penman, Steve Hasty and Steve Wilkinson, and looking forward to this one, and as always to kick us off we go to I think it's right in calling you the elder statesman of the group, George.
Well,
we'll go to George for a history lesson.
Why not? And that's what it is essentially. But a very important one for me. 1953 is where I'm going to for the Bolton match that year, and exciting year for me because I was just getting ready in September to go to a new school. Mum and Dad had just moved into a new house over at Howden, and so it was quite a lot of exciting things going down. Nice big back garden in Howden, and my dad made it plain what he was going to do with it, because the first thing he bought was a petrol lawnmower, so that made it pretty plain there was going to be a lot of football in that big back garden. But for that week, I mean, we had my dad, my granddad, my Uncle Tom, poor Uncle John had gone by then. And if there's one phrase, and Stu picked it out this morning when he was on Twitter, that I got almost sick of by the time we got the match, was the line of Vienna. And I was told how important Lofthouse was to England as well as to Bolton, and what a tremendous play he was. And when I was at that age, I never really understood what the line of Vienna meant. But there was a piece in the paper, and I think I've sent you the clip of it, Steve, somewhere, where it actually, a reporter's written down why he got that label. It was when he scored the winning goal. There were 3 Austrian defenders on top of him.
I never got that, George. I got a lot of pictures and a lot of other stuff, but I never got the article, I'm afraid.
Didn't get the text right. Okay. Well, the text said that the defender had tackled him from behind. Another defender had strong-armed him from the side, and the goalkeeper had kicked him as he headed the ball into the net, and that was England 3-2. The Austrians were scared of him because 6 months before we'd played a friendly against them, and they found him unplayable, and we won 2-0, and he scored both the goals. So in Vienna, the Austrians were determined to stop him, but they couldn't. And that one is a good one because that's from the 58 Cup final when he scored both the goals against Manchester United, and that's a depiction of how he scored his second. He had this knack of watching the goalkeeper collect the ball in the air, waiting until the goalkeeper touched down with both feet, and then leaning in with his shoulder to shoulder and pushing the goalkeeper in the back of the net. Can you imagine the furore there would be now? It certainly wouldn't be a goal, that's for sure. But Lofthouse perfected it, and he waited till the goalkeeper was steady and had the ball at both feet, and in went his shoulder, and the goalkeeper went into the back of the net. And that was in the 58 Cup final, one of the goals he scored then. What a man he was, though. We went to this game, and it was going to be a great game, everybody was saying. And sure enough, it was, because we were playing virtually a cup final team. And wasn't long after kick-off that George Hanna gave us a start. And then after about 20 minutes, Nat Lofthouse scored. After about 35 minutes, Nat Lofthouse scored. And it was a procession then for the rest of the match, just us holding Lofthouse out. It's the only match I've ever seen Frank Brennan, who at the time was probably the best centre-half in the country, absolutely sick of his life because he just couldn't handle Lofthouse. And Frank Brennan got the run around that day. And then in the second half, to top the match off, Lofthouse got his hat-trick. Joe Harvey scored a consolation towards the end of the match, 34,824 playing. But the outstanding feature throughout the game was Lofthouse. And although he was a good... I'm not sure what that one is.
It's a game against Bolton in the 1950s. It's the only one I could find.
Right. Yeah.
1954.
Well, that's the year after, yeah. And that's that looks like Rob Lero scoring for us. Oh, no, it's not. That's our goalkeeper. So that's obviously somebody scoring for Bolton. Could easily be Lofthouse, but that's not Lofthouse there. I think that's Doug Holden, the left winger, who was the other good player. But Lofthouse was a good player, but they had a good team. I mean, Hansen was a brilliant goalkeeper. The sort of goalkeeper at the minute, mind, who would have been accused of eating all the pies because he was quite a weighty character with a very big waist. But he still was a good goalkeeper.
I did find this as well, George. I found that, that was from the era of that period, but struggling to find one with Bolton on. But that was Newcastle Arsenal. That was because you sent me that one, which is
the second match, is the 59 match,
which is against Bolton Wanderers. But that was the program from that era, but we couldn't find one with Bolton on, sadly.
No, me neither. Tried hard. The other thing I was saying was that there wasn't just Lofthouse. Wheeler was a very good half-back who played for England, and the left winger Doug Holden was a brilliant player as well. And just to emphasise what Lofthouse meant to Bolton. 452 games, 255 goals. Joined Bolton at 15, stayed with them till he was nearly 70. Player, coach, caretaker manager, and then vice president or whatever they called him. But he was a Bolton through and through. And because they actually put up a statue. Now, I think I sent you a picture of the statue as well, Steve.
I've got that.
At Lofthouse. That's it. And not surprising. He really was Mr. Bolton, but a tremendous player. And along with my people in my family and others were about that era would say occasionally, and I still do, why didn't Jackie Milburn get more caps for England? But Jackie Milburn was competing against Nat Lofthouse and Stan Mortensen and Charlie Wayman and Roy Bentley, all centre forwards that were banging goals in for nothing and all playing for England. So, in a sense, it wasn't surprising that Jackie didn't get as more caps than he did. The plus for Jackie was he was as good on the right wing as he was at centre forward. So occasionally he would get a game on the right wing. The other bits of history I was going to mention was to do with I mentioned it, 452 games, 255 goals. And our manager, of course, was Seymour at the time, and Bill Ridden was their manager. But it was an excellent game. And having had the build-up about Lofthouse, you know how it is, people build a game up when you go to it, and certainly I did several times when I was younger, and they tell us this was going to happen, that was going to happen. Well, none of it happened sometimes. Or somebody's going to be playing. Oh, Stanley Matthews played today. Well, Stanley Matthews wasn't even in bloody Newcastle, never mind on the pitch. But this match, it was a build-up for Nat Lofthouse, and that's exactly what it was. Supreme centre forward, bustling centre forward, they called him in those days, and his hat trick was devastating, because I think we would have won the match if it hadn't been for him. But the 3 goals he scored knocked the stuffing out of the way, and that was it. Some of the other stuff I sent, Steve, I'll keep for the second match, if that's all right. So
yeah, I've only got a couple of bits left, mate. So I'm not sure whether some got lost in transit, but I've only got a team sheet and the program that I showed earlier. So maybe some things got lost in transit.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, that's the first one.
Great stuff. Stu?
I feel quite privileged being on the top row next to such a esteemed company. So the first game I want to talk about is probably our most famous game against Bolton over the last 40 years. And it was the Nelly season, the 95-96 season. We started the game before, where we swatted Coventry aside very comfortably, 3-0 at home. I made my way down there on a minibus. I got picked up from work, full of noxious gases, alcohol, raggies, but most importantly, full of belief. We knew that we were going to win even before we turned up. The whole city was vibrant, wasn't at the time. And if anyone had any doubts about this new French winger, would just say, and I think they were quashed that evening. David Ginola. He didn't have an outstanding game against Coventry, but against Bolton, my God, he stamped his authority all over the Premier League. I'm sure if I was the Bolton right back that day, I think I would have just retired if I knew I had to play him every week. But after about quarter an hour, he got the ball and he just glided down the touchline from the halfway line, just inside their half, glided down and then sent over this inch-perfect cross where Big Sir Les just rose like a salmon as he did, powered it home, and we're 1-0 up. Cruising. Ginola was then doing these little tricks. He's popping up all over the place, shooting from everywhere. He had the bit between his teeth that day. They equalised, but even just after half time, they equalised. And it seemed to be, it didn't matter. We knew we were going to win. Such was the confidence that the team had. And the second goal was Clarkey breaking out from the middle. He split the defence with a cracking ball. He split the defence. The cross come over from Gillespie, if I remember right, and Rob Lee headed the ball home. But it sounds like he just had the ball home, but he was running. And to run the ball and control it and cushion it and get power in it the way he did, it was a lot harder than what it looked. And it was in front of the away end as well. So that put us 2-1 up. And a few minutes later, Ferdinand turned on and just inside their half, ran the half length of the pitch, skipped a few challenges, took the ball out wide and drilled it in the corner, and it was like Hugh Bedlam, and from there it was the start of something that was very, very nearly special. It was an unforgettable game and an unforgettable season, and I can still remember the E-I-E-I-E-I-O up the Premier League we go, getting sung all the way back to Newcastle, so that was the first game. It's the one that everyone remembers, and just I had to pick it because we won 3-1, didn't I? But it was at Burnden Park as well. It was they'd just been promoted the season before, and they got taught a lesson of what the Premier League was about. Even though we'd only been up one season, but already established ourselves as one of the main forces in the league. So that was the first game I wanted to talk about. I know Mitch wanted to talk about it as well, but I think he's chosen another game. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great stuff, Mitch. Over to you.
Hi, all right, lads. Yeah, my first game was going to be that one. That was my first trip to Burnden Park and my first experience of the Burnden Park with the supermarket that filled half of the stand.
Yeah.
That was a strange setup indeed. I think it had a funny name, like Nomad or Nomad or something like that. It was really, really quite odd concept. But yeah, that was my first trip to Burnden Park. Then I was thinking, what other games could I do? And obviously, I like to be miserable, and I nearly picked an unexpected defeat in 2010 when we got thumped 5-1 out the blue. But instead, I'm going to go for 2nd February 2002. It's a home game, and it was a bit of a cracker, actually. Bobby Robson against Sam Allardyce. It was a time when we seemed to score goals freely against Bolton, and Bolton used to come back at us freely as well. It always seemed to be up for a game against us. Allardyce was going through a terrible run at the time. I think they just got thumped off Man U. And I think they were in the middle of a 12-match run without a win. But they always seem to come to Newcastle fired up. And a name that's synonymous for me with Bolton was their goalkeeper, Jussi Jääskeläinen. And he was central to this game in a way. First minute, he made a great save from Bellamy. And then against the run of play, really, in 20 minutes, they managed to nick a goal. A lad called Gardner, I think he was Jamaican international, Ricardo Gardner. and he nicked the ball off Jamie McLean and then thumped it past Given from the edge of the 18-yard box. But then the controversy in the game came 5 minutes later. At the time, there was a rule about how long the goalkeeper could hold onto a ball for to stop them from wasting time. I think it was 6 seconds, wasn't it? And David Ellery pulled Jaskalainen up for holding onto the ball too long. And cue one of the famous Allardyce rants on the touchline, waving his arms and stamping his feet. And then, typical at the time, Solano taps in direct free kick one way and Shearer smashes it into the bottom corner. But then they took the lead again 34 minutes after a poor clearance. It was another thumping finish from one of their defenders who I should really have looked it up harder. I couldn't remember the name of the lad. But I know it was a spectacular finish. We managed to get it back to 2-2 at half time. A classic Solano cross with a Shearer header to finish. And then the second half was more the same. It was quite tight end to end. But it was Craig Bellamy got the winner just about 10 minutes before the end. They wrap up with a well-deserved win and a hard-fought win. And that's my first game. In the end, it was at the time, it was one of those games you kind of went to and you knew they would be up for a fight even though they were in the middle of a bad time. Allardyce always seemed to have them organised like that.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, Sam Allardyce, I knew he would feature tonight like quite heavily. I still don't think he'd be managing any of your teams, but we'll find out later on. Okay, Steve Hasty, over to you, mate.
I'm going to take my second game first because Steve Wilkinson's taking a game later on, and my story follows on from his. So I'll go with my second game. I'm going to come right up, fairly up to date anyway. 9 years ago, April 2012. You're Easter Monday. You know the game. You know the goal. You know the man. It was Hatton Ben Arthur. I don't know how many times you've seen this goal replayed, and you see it in your head, and you just think, is he going to go all the way? Is he going to go all the way? Yes, he is. Bang. And that's exactly what he did. And if you remember right, it was a lovely pass. The game wasn't a very good game, to be perfectly honest. But we broke from defence, and there was this lovely pass by Cabaye, and he just plays it what he's probably expecting to be in the modern game, like you've seen, and God knows how many times over the last sort of fortnight in the Euros. He's probably expecting the ball to be played back to him, because that's the way that the modern game seems to be played these days. Slow, laborious, a little bit of a build-up, play the ball, play it between each other. So Cabaye comes out, he plays the ball to Ben Arthur, who decides to not only collect the ball, but pivot and take on the defender all at the same time, and leaves this defender, who's right up his tail, for dead. Within, less than a second, he's got at least 5-6 yards on him. The bloke sprawled over the ground. The covering midfielder comes in, and he just glides past him. The tackle comes in, and it's as though his legs are invisible, because the tackle comes in and he just misses him completely. And Ben Arthur's in his stride and he's away. And then you just see like this Moses moment where the tide just opened the defence. By this point, several defenders are standing there wondering, do I go to him? Do I not go to him? Do I go with me man? Do I stick with me man? What do I do? And Ben Arthur's just running at them, and they're panicking. You can just when you see it played back, you just see the panic in their eyes. So one of them just suddenly decides he's going to go for it, and the other one decides he's going to drop off. And as the other one drops off, as the guy who left drops off, this space just appears, and Ben Arthur just carries on going, and he gets 12 yards. He gets right onto the 12-yard, the penalty spot, and the goalkeeper comes out and he just stroked the ball into the bottom corner. And if I remember rightly, literally, George, you remember it well. We were in awe. We could not believe we were going. And I can just remember whispering across to you, going, "He's going to go all the way. He's going to go all the way. He's going to. Yeah. No, he's not." And he did, and he put it in the back of the net. The whole place, we were absolutely gobsmacked. And that, the avoiding the lunges, the challenges that were coming in, and that summed up what Hatton Ben Arthur was, because earlier than that he'd hammered a free kick, and I think it had gone skywards. He was one of those mercurial players that he would either, if he was on his game, if he was on his day, he was unplayable. But they were very, very rare. those opportunities were rare. But he was so exciting. When he was on his game, he was so exciting. And I just loved to watch Ben Arthur. The rest of the game, I mean, we got the obligatory Cisse. I think it was his 9th goal in 10 that put us 2-0 up. And what was also important at this point, this put us 4th in the league. So we went to 4th top. We were level with Tottenham, and we were playing at that particular time for a place in the Champions League. You know, that's where we were. It was Pardew, you know, and eventually got us into Europe. I think we finished 5th. But that's how close we were, and we were level with Tottenham in those days, and we were pushing for a Champions League spot. I think we'd also gone 4 or 5 games unbeaten. We'd had 4 straight wins. It was a great little run that we'd had at the back end of March, beginning of April, to get us to where we were. But when you look at the team, I just glanced at it. I mean, you know, Tim Krul in goal, 2 fullbacks were Santon and Simpson. We had Colaccini and Williamson were playing as the central defenders. Gutierrez on the right, Perch and Cabaye in the middle, Ben Arthur on the left with Barr and Cisse up front. And you look at that team and you think, you know, that team got into European spot. But then I looked at the bench, and you look at the bench, and you've got Elliott, the goalkeeper. You've got Ryan Taylor. You've got Danny Goslin, Hadi Habib. You've got Shola Amiobi, who came on for Bar partway through second half. But then you've got Shane Ferguson, and you've got Tavernier, who is now pulling up all sorts of rocks and trees up in Glasgow for Glasgow Rangers. And you're thinking, dear me, there was something about that squad. There was something about that team. There was a gel between them. And at that particular time, Pardew, he says through gritted teeth, had them playing decent football. You know, we all know the exciting times under Pardew were exciting, but the bad times under Pardew were shocking. And that's what I relate to. But in that particular game, just seeing a player with the skill of Ben Arthur, if only he could have been consistent, if only he could string half a dozen or more games together with similar performances. But whether it was something in his head, I'm not too sure. Whether it was just the makeup of the man. I mean, at one point, I think he announced that he got bored with football just recently before all of those type of things. And I think he was always bored with football. I think he was bored with what went on during the week, and it was only on match days. But sometimes because he hadn't done the work during the week, he couldn't perform on match days. I don't know. Maybe you could answer that one, Steve, or maybe he's one we'll have a conversation with other people who maybe had him around them. They might tell us on one of the talk-ins. If we can ever get a talk-in with Colaccini, Williamson, Cabaye, Perch, then maybe we might be lucky.
Yeah, we'll wait and see on that, Steve. But
I
think so. I'm not sure there'll be people clamouring for those kind of talk-ins, but you never know. Steve Wilkinson, over to you, mate, for your first recollection.
Right. Well, I'm going to change the order because of what Steve's going to do. Because if I did my first game first, if you know what I mean, then Steve would have talked about after the second game. So I'll do my second game first. If that all makes sense, I don't know.
We'll just nod and say yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. Well, my game I'm going to talk about is the game in 1976, which we played Bolton in the what will be the 5th round of the FA Cup at Bolton, and the game finished 3-3, and it features arguably one of Supermac's greatest goals. I think we've talked in the previous times about the goal he scored against Leicester, and I think there's a lot of debate as to whether that goal or the goal he scored in this game was his greatest goal. And I know Supermac rates both goals very highly. But the game, there was a big crowd there, 46,000 there at Bolton, and it was the old ground, Burnden Park at the time still. Bolton had a team that was a sort of mix of experience and youth. Just 2 or 3 names that you'll recall from that time. Tony Dunn, who played for Man United in the 60s, he played when they played Benfica in the final. Peter Thompson, who had done well with Liverpool over that time, had been an England international. They were the sort of experienced players in the mid-30s. And then a couple of youngsters. There was this centre-half who was 21 years old called Sam Allardyce. You might have heard of him since. And there was this other guy playing for them who was only 19, this teenager, called Peter Reid. You know, so they actually were teenagers in the past. You don't think of that these days, but and it was actually Allardyce that scored the first goal. We seemed to have trouble in the air in this game. I don't know what it was. We had maybe, you know, the central defence was Glenn Keely and Pat Howard with Irvin Natris and Alan Kennedy fullbacks. But all three goals from Bolton were as a result of crosses, and the first one was a cross from the left, and Allardyce rose above the defence and headed it in. That was in the first few minutes. But then we talked last week about liking goals where there's shots from outside the box, from free kicks directly from there. The other sort of goal I always used to like was when the player went round the goalie and slotted it in, and that's what Supermac did with the equaliser. He went forward from a fantastic pass from Tommy Cassidy, who was playing in midfield, a sort of chip pass into the edge of the penalty area. Keeper was advancing, Supermac went round him and slotted into the empty net, and that was after half an hour. And then just before half time was the goal of the game, and as I say, it was Supermac's one of his greatest goals, and it was a innocuous situation. We've got to throw in on the left wing. Tommy Craig took it. He just threw it to the edge of the box. It was about 20, 25 yards out, and Supermac sort of over his shoulder hit it on the volley as it had bounced once just in front of him, and he shot it, and it went right in the top corner on the far side of the goal. Absolutely fantastic goal, and you know, I don't know how many thousand Newcastle fans were in that 46,000. Probably, you know, 10,000 plus, because you used to get 25% of the crowd, so there would be 10, 12,000 in Newcastle there, and the place went absolutely berserk, as you can imagine. So that puts us in 2-1 at half time, and then another headed goal soon after half time, and this time the defence was all to hell, because the sort of three of them all went up. The Mick Mahoney goal and the centre halves all went up, and nobody seemed to get it, and it broke, and it ended up with Gary Jones slotting in the equaliser. So there it is, 2s each, and it was heading for probably that a 2-2 draw until we scored another goal in the 82nd minute. Mickey Burns went through, gave a ball inside to Tommy Cassidy, who was again, you know, the great passer of the ball for creating forward chances. And Alan Gowland just pointed to him to put it inside the penalty area, and he put it exactly where Gowland asked him to put it, and Gowland just slotted it past the keeper. So that was us 3-2 up with less than 10 minutes to go, and of course, typical Newcastle. The equaliser in a corner on the right wing, and defence totally outjumped by this Paul. It was Paul Jones, I think, this time, centre half, and headed it down into the net. So it was finished 3-3. Great game to be at, exciting, and joy to be there to witness this fantastic goal by Supermac. And it, fortunately, unlike the other one that he scored against Leicester, there is video of it. You can go on YouTube and see that goal. So that was my first game, and Steve's obviously going to talk about what happened after that. So
great stuff. Okay, George. We'll come back to you once I've given the sponsors a shout out. So big thank you to Spider VPN. Just Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of your internet search, and they can protect all your passwords and everything on your computer. Thanks for their ongoing sponsorship, and to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and the website is www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. John from Jab is in the chat tonight. Big shout out to him. He's been doing all of our flyers since we started this show. So big shout out to John, and to John at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle. If you're a first time visitor to the channel, please subscribe. And the only way you can comment in the comments box now is if you subscribe to the channel. That cleans it up a little bit. We haven't been inundated with trolls, it has to be said in the chat, but there has been a few creeping in over the last 12 months. So you now need to subscribe to the channel to give us a load of insults. So feel free to do that if you're sitting watching frustrated that your point of view on getting put across onto the chat. There are a lot of like-minded people in the chat, though, some friendly people in the chat and some regulars in there. So please join them and put a point across. and hit the like button, which is the little thumb, and click share the video, and please subscribe. We still do a show a night, 7 a week, well worth popping on at any time. Wednesday night, though, is when we reflect on days gone by. We don't talk about what's going on at the moment, but I will be back tomorrow night, of course, 6 o'clock with Supermac and Gibbo. Plenty to talk about, whether it's England and if it's coming home, whether it's Rafa Benitez finally taking the job at Everton. Join us tomorrow, 6 o'clock, for a chat on that. And Friday night, unfortunately, it's a pre-record again because I am working again on Friday night. The shackles are certainly coming off, but I'm working on Friday night, so we'll not be able to go live. But you can join me and the Fab Four. And congratulations to Steve Hasty, who is now not a woman on a poster for a change. The Italian version of the Godfather poster with Mitch looking as if he's going to top somebody. Keith Patterson with a woman's haircut. Steve with a rather slicked back 1970s look, and me with, well, I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, fantastic. John, great poster, mate. Thank you for that. Saturday is going to be a write-off now that we are through to the later stages of the Euros. No football content then, but I have done a fascinating interview with Disco Dave. And he's not what you think. So I'm not going to say any more about Disco Dave, but tune into that pre-record on Saturday. Certainly well worth a watch. Disco Dave, thoroughly nice fella, and that's an interesting one for Saturday for you all. But I think we'll all be intoxicated watching the England game. So George, back to you, mate.
Okay. Can I go back to one of the messages on the bottom asking about the loan, or Kinnear asking about Ferguson when he was on loan. He was on loan at Birmingham. That's where it was, and he asked the Birmingham manager, "Who's that lad at left back?" And he embarrassedly was told, "Well, he's yours, actually." But never mind.
Aye, Shane Ferguson. That's right. I remember
Shane
that.
Ferguson. And the other one is to go back to Steve Wilkinson's match, and he was saying about couldn't understand how they were not getting many headers in the middle. Well, you answered your own question, Steve. Glenn Keely. They are looking for. I'm sorry.
He's not in my team at the end. You might be surprised.
No, he was a nice lad, but weak in terms of centre forwards, I've got to say. Anyway, to get back to what I'm supposed to be talking about, I'm not going very much forward from my first match. I'm only going to 1959, 22nd of April, 59. And the reason for that is it's my era in the sense I was at the club playing in juniors and the ends during that time. And some of the lads in our team, I'd played with quite a few of them actually. Brian Harvey, the goalkeeper, Albert Franks, the centre half, Ken Hale, who was playing midfield, and George Eastham. I didn't actually play in a team with George, but trained in the same squad for a little while when he was first joined the club. So it has some personal memories, but the biggest memory for me is it was a sad in many ways because it was the start of the demise of Newcastle United under Charlie Mitten. Charlie Mitten had lots of fantastic things, but some of his more outrageous ideas eventually caught up with it. I mean, the very fact that Brian Harvey was in goal. Why was Brian Harvey in goal? Because Charlie Mitten thought Ronnie Simpson was too small. Bloody Scottish international goalkeeper for 10 years. And suddenly Charlie Mitten comes. He wasn't that small. He was just short of 6 foot. But he was wiry and he didn't look to have much about him. But Charlie thought he was too small. So 6 foot odd Brian Harvey became a goalkeeper. And he was a disaster. He had hands that looked like they were put on hot. I mean, he just not the sort of steady person you wanted in the middle of the heart of your defence. And the other sad thing about it was that, having said Bolton had some incredible players, even in this team, Hopkinson was the England goalkeeper, Parry was still playing, and Stevens was still playing. But the saddest thing was Nat Lofthouse was in this team, and Nat Lofthouse didn't get a kick against Franks. Albert Franks was a nice lad, but I could have played centre forward against Albert and scored, and yet that Lofthouse hardly got a kick. And I thought that was terribly sad to just witness that from a few years ago when the man was unplayable against one of the best centre halves in the country. And these things come around, you know. You see people in that era, and they get their time. I just wonder if Nat just didn't go on a bit too long, because in that game, as I say, he hardly got a kick, poor soul, and he certainly wasn't the threat in the air that he had been in the past. But that was quite sad. The other sad thing was, as I say, is seeing the introduction of some of the more outrageous things of Charlie Mitten, and that was the you had to be 6 foot to get in the team and all that sort of thing, and one or two lads suffered for it. I mean, Ken Hale was a decent midfield player. Wasn't decent. He was fantastic, and after he left Newcastle, had a full career for 20 odd years in all levels. But because he didn't meet the 6 foot rule, there was no way he was going to make it at Newcastle United. And I think Bill Curry suffered a little bit as well, a bustling local centre forward who didn't last very long after Mitten became manager. So that was my second match. And of course, the other sad thing was, of course, Mitten was imposing things on the club which were really destroying it in many ways, to the point where, of course, that season we went down. We were on our way down, and he got the sack. 17,451 at this game, and that tells you everything for Newcastle United. Yes, that's one of the other things I sent to Steve. That's the cup final where Bolton beat Manchester United 2-0. And have a look at the Manchester United back five. And that Lofthouse just took them apart at Wembley. They just couldn't get near him, and just shows the passion and the ability of the man, that he could take on the Bill Fuchs and Scope and Goodwin and others, and Harry Gregg, the goalkeeper. Of course, we showed you a picture earlier where he actually put Harry Gregg in the back of the net for his second goal, something which now he would probably get sent off for. That's after all the other players that had a go at him, of course. But in those days, Nat had worked out how he could make use of the shoulder charge against goalkeepers. I mean, it's a thing of mine. I think goalkeepers now are so protected, it's ridiculous. But never mind. That's another discussion for another time. The other thing I think, did I send you something else, Steve?
That's it now, mate. Yeah.
Right. It was a program. We showed it earlier. That's right. I got the program for this 59 front of the program for this 59 match, and it was the typical picture of St James, the drawing of St James's Park of the day, with the open ends and open stands and all that sort of thing. But as I say, the overriding feeling I had about this 2-0 win that we had against Bolton, and Curry and Taylor scored the goals. I mean, the lad that scored, Taylor, that scored the second goal, he only lasted months, I think, at Newcastle. He came and went in a couple of months. It was weird, and that's the sort of thing that was happening under Charlie Mitten. And as I say, it was the start of the demise of Mitten himself, but sadly the demise of Newcastle United at the time. And basically just sad. The fact that quite a lot of those lads I knew personally was quite important, but it was it was nearly the demise in himself as well, because not long after this was when I got injured. So it was, as I say, overriding feeling about the 59 match was a quite a sad outcome, even though we won 2-0. So that's my second recollection.
Okay, great stuff. Back to Stu for his second.
Right, my second one is Boxing Day 2002. Another trip to Lancaster on Boxing Day, whether it be Wigan, whether it be Bolton, whether it be Manchester United. I know George mentioned previously that it was done for that reason, it was trying to keep things local. But I might start a new feature with Ask George. Can anyone remember if we've ever won a game in Lancashire on Boxing Day? Ever? I really don't think we have. Oh, here's the answer.
Yeah. It's okay, I've knocked the sound off.
I thought someone was giving George the answer there. So if you, for those who have been, you know, I lived in Lancaster in Lancashire for a couple of years, and from, I would say, the end of October to middle of March, it was just grey. You know, like the sky was always like lead grey, and they always had this fine drizzle. And this Boxing Day was no different. And I was staying in the Yorkshire in Keighley at the time, for the family Christmas. Well, not my family, the ex's family. We drove over, and we had no expectation to win, because no matter how good we were and how much better we were than Bolton, who were doing all right at the time, we just knew it was Boxing Day and Newcastle weren't going to win. And any optimism we did have left was shattered after about 5 minutes, when I would say probably the best player Bolton have ever had in the Premier League era, JJ Okocha, he smashed one in after 5 minutes. So because it was we got beat 4-3, I had to write down who scored all the goals. Shearer equalised. It was a great pass. It was similar to the one I was talking about before, where Clarkey put the ball through for Gillespie to cross, but this time it was Nobby passing it to, who did he pass it to there? Kieran Dyer. But Shearer didn't head the ball, he slotted the ball in. So we're 1-1. But like a minute later, I'm not even joking, like a minute later, we'd just stop jumping up and down. And they've got a free kick, and I wouldn't be able to tell you what it was for, but they had a free kick. And the 2002 World Cup had been that year in Korea and Japan. And there was a goal by Ronaldinho against, was it Ronaldinho that scored that goal against England? Well, the free kick was from similar distance. So this goal that went in, you don't know if it was a shot, if it was a cross, if it was a shot, but it was hit with a lot more power. But regardless, we're 2-1 down, which then just before half-time, come 3-1 down we didn't defend a corner that well there. Centre-half, Icelandic guy, I can't remember his name, he nodded it in quite powerfully.
Mundy Bergs.
So that's him. 3-1 down. Second half starts. We soon become 4-1 down. But then we started like a sort of a comeback. I've got it written down here. This was a comedy I remember at the time, because Shola, bless him, used to get a lot of stick from the fans, didn't it? You know,
yeah.
He used to say, like, I wish I could go that far in my holders when he's trapped the ball or tried to control the ball, you know. And he's like those bat and ball over on the elastic, you know, but we're not trying to slag him off. But Kieran Dyer took a shot and it hit off Shola, and it went in. The keeper was wrong-footed, and Shola had the audacity to claim it, and he actually got given it. I'm sure in today's panel checking everything, it would have went down to either I would have said Kieran's goal. But we're 4-2, coming up to about 15 minutes left, 10 minutes left, and we get a free kick in the edge of the box. And we'll talk about their best player in the Premier League era. Then it's only right we'll talk about ours, which is Alan Shearer. Maybe it's not just the Premier League, but all time. And I don't think this goal gets as much credit as it deserves, because he scored that many great goals for us. And with this one being in a defeat, I think it gets hidden amongst it all. But it was just, if you remember the goal he scored against Leicester, the free kick that won the game 4-3, proper thunderblaster. It was like that, but he was on the corner of the box, and it just diagonally smacked straight at the top of the net, and it just never wavered. It was straight as you want. 4-3, and you think, we've got a chance here. You know, there's about 9-10 minutes with injury time to play. But the game seemed to peter out. The Bolton, again, under Allardyce, they managed the game out well. And Okocha had the ball, what seemed like for about 9 of these 10 minutes. In their corner flag, just kept winning throw-ins off us all the time when we were trying to attack. So we never got back into the game. And it was another 4-3. But it was an entertaining game. As I said, we lost by the odd goal in 7. Another Boxing Day defeat. But it was the first of my many trips to Bolton because, as I mentioned earlier, I moved to Lancaster for a couple of years, to 2010 to 2012. And Bolton was the nearest Premier League team. So if I wasn't driving up to Newcastle for the games, I would go to Bolton, and it was only a tenner in, and it was never full, so you could always go and watch them play against the Arsenals, the Tottenhams, Man Uniteds, Liverpools, so it was about 45 minutes from Lancaster to drive down. So I ended up going to the Reebok, I think it's been renamed now, but the Reebok Stadium as it was then, I ended up going there quite often. But my first game was a Boxing Day defeat. So if George can give us an answer if we've ever won in Lancashire on Boxing Day, I'm a betting man. I'd like to say we haven't. So that's me done.
Great stuff. Okay, Steve Hasty, over to you.
Right. Well, as I said, I was going to follow on from Steve's marvellous 3-3 draw in the FA Cup 5th round. So I'm going to take us to the following Wednesday, February the 18th. And you're going to look at it and you're going to think, why on earth would you pick an FA Cup replay, which I'm going to tell you right at the very start, ended 0-0. But believe it or not, that there was 52,760 people turned up at this game. Now, that is the biggest attendance we've had since. Well, we've never surpassed it at St James's Park because of the redevelopment, etc. We've never had a situation. The nearest we came to it, I think, was in the 2011, 2012 played Man City, and we got 2,370 odd squeezed in. But we actually squeezed in 52,760 people for a February 7:30 kickoff in the freezing cold under the floodlights. So you can imagine what the atmosphere was like. It was brilliant because we all love night games. We all love games under the floodlights. One of the reasons why there was 52,000 there was we all know that we suffer from something called cup fever. We also were playing 10 days later in the League Cup final. So we're already in the League Cup final. This was a replay after we'd played 3-3, which was probably the best game of the round so far. We'd already played QPR in away in the third round. And I think, if I remember right, I think I wrote it down. The QPR, we drew 0-0. We brought them home. There was we beat them 2-1, and there was 37,225 turned up for that. We then got Coventry in the fourth round. We drew 1-1 away. We brought them back, and we absolutely hammered them 5-0 at home, by which point there was 44,676 had turned up. So for this game, 10 days before a cup final at Wembley, the excitement and the drama of what we love, cup fever, was absolutely ringing out our pores by this particular point. Drew 0-0. What can you say? Typical Newcastle. The cup fever was still there. We were still excited, but it was a 0-0 draw. We were lucky to get a 0-0 draw because they hit the woodwork a couple of times. But like I said, when you're playing Newcastle under the floodlights, there's something really, really exciting about playing at St James's Park, or as we do, the nerve jangling that comes with extra time, the lights, the freezing cold, we're all wrapped up. So there we are, 0-0. We then had to go and play them again because it was 0-0, extra time. Something that youngsters probably don't understand now, but we go to a secondary play. But the secondary play isn't played back at Burnden Park, the home of Bolton Wanderers. We'll go to a neutral ground this time. We'll go to Leeds. We'll go to Elland Road. And now, I didn't go to the 3-3 game because it was a Saturday. I played football for school on Saturdays, so I didn't get to the travel away in those days for games like that. I went to the 0-0. I didn't go to the game because, again, you're at school and you've got to get out. But I'm glad I didn't go because if I remember rightly, it turned into an absolute battle. Now, bearing in mind, it's called neutral ground. It's Elland Road. It's Leeds United. They're playing it. There's a team from Lancashire coming over, and there's a bunch of Geordies coming over. and these Leeds lot are going to wait, and they're just going to fight with anybody, and that's what happened on that particular one. We won 2-1. I'm sure it's probably in one of the books, Steve, that you've written before about situations like this.
Probably.
But we ended up winning that 2-1, and 43,000 turned up at Elland Road to watch Newcastle play Bolton Wanderers in this second replay. But that's what Cup Fever's about. That's what the buzz is about, being a Newcastle fan. I know we probably looked at that and we thought we're never going to win the league. You know, it's this old adage. But we always feel as though in a cup we've got something special about us, and it gets we're going. It really, really does. And for me, when you talk about that, I looked at the team. I mean, you look at the team that were put out. Mahoney, Natras, Davy Craig. I'm sure Natras played at left back, because Davy Craig was playing. We had Howard and Keeley, because we had Kennedy playing as well, and Kennedy must have moved into the midfield. We had Tommy Cassidy, we had Davy Craig, we had Tommy Craig, we had Mickey Burns, and we had Gowland and MacDonald up front. And that's some team in those days, and that's not far off the team that played in the cup final 10 days later. All I can say is exciting times, great times, massive, massive crowds. You know, in those days, you look at it and you think this is, and people say, oh, you know, if you're not doing well, you're not getting. If you're playing good football, you always got good crowds. And if it was the cup, you are almost guaranteed a massive crowd at St James's Park. I just wish we could do that again. I'll just die for a cup run. I don't know about you guys. It seems so long ago that we had those great games down at Wembley. Well, the great days down at Wembley for the two finals and the semi-final. I suppose I could even go as far as 2005, and we went down to Wales, to Cardiff. But I'd love to get a cup run again. I'm sounding like Keegan. I'd love it. If we could get a cup run.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's my game. That's why I chose that one. I wanted to follow on with Steve. I wanted to just throw a little bit of nostalgia, get we excited about the cup. Maybe get we excited again, but not that we need to be excited about what's coming on Saturday.
No, definitely not. Okay, Neil, back to you.
My first game originally was going to be my first trip to Burnden Park. This was my first trip to the Reebok, as it was then. I think it's now the University of Bolton Stadium. I may be wrong there, but
no, you're right. You're right.
It certainly has changed names. So this is October 2001, and as it was around about my birthday, I couldn't remember much about it, so I did have to jog my memory rather. Stu's also mentioned one player that, if you'd asked me two players who were synonymous with Bolton over the last 50 years, for me, Jussi Laskelainen, the goalkeeper, was one of them. Yeah. Gundy Bergson was the other. Two Icelandic players who were stalwarts for them, really. And my first game involved something to do with Laskelainen, and so does my second game. And the reason being is that Bolton made an interesting decision not to put a reserve keeper on the bench. And let's see how that played out. In the first house, Laskelainen did well to keep them in the game. Actually, he made two cracking saves from Bellamy. And our first goal came on just before half-time. Nobby Solano gliding in a ball that I think was cut back by Shearer. I think these days VAR would rule that he was a pubic hair offside or something like that, because there was lots of people complaining about it. But the goal stood and we went in 1-0 up. The key moment, though, came on the hour. Laskelainen got sent off, and they had to put another scan in here, and a lad called Bo Hansen, who was a Danish winger, had to go in goal. And his first job was to pick the ball out the back of the net, because from the free kick that they got, Laurent Robert hit one of his customary screamers into the top corner. So 2-0. 72 minutes, Shearer added one, a lovely header from an even lovelier Robert cross. And then Bellamy finally got a goal that he deserved to wrap it up on 84 minutes. But the big thing about that was, in a time when they just increased the amount of subs you could have, so having a keeper on the bench wasn't a luxury. Allardyce had made this weird decision not to put a keeper on the bench, and it backfired on him. And that's a very typical Allardyce decision, if you ask me. But it was a cracking day and a cracking trip. and a really good win to put Bolton away at a time when we often did have good games against them.
Okay, great stuff. Finishing off on the game review with Steve Wilkinson's second recollection.
Yeah, well, my second game follows on nicely from George's stories, actually, because first of all, his first story was 3 weeks before I was born. So that was a memory.
Thanks, Stu.
So that made me 11 years old when I went to this game, which was the game in 1965, and it was the game when we clinched promotion. And it sort of follows on from George, because he said when Charlie Mitten took over that we went down to the second division, and we spent 4 or 5 years there. And I started to go in 62 was the first game I went to, which was second division games, and I didn't go very many times, but this was the first season in 64-65 when I went to nearly all the home games with my dad. And this one in particular was, as the season built on, we were really up for going up, and it was because we'd got a pretty established team, primarily at the back. Gordon Marshall in goal, Dave Craig and Frank Clark and the fullbacks, and the half-back line. I'm going back to using George language for these old days of the half-back line, which was always numbered 4, 5 and 6, was Stan Anderson, who was captain, John McGrath, fantastic centre-half, and Jim Eiley. And that was the sort of, they were kind of defensive, creative midfield players. And then up front, we had various combinations. In this particular game, Pop Robson, Dave Hilly, Bobby Cummins centre forward, Willie Penman. Stu assures me that he's no relation. He's done his family tree, no relation. And Tommy Knox was on the left side of the forward line. And various combinations of that forward line. We'd had Ron McGarry playing a few times and one or two others. But this game was important because it was almost a 3-horse race to go up. Northampton, believe it or not, ourselves and Bolton. So if we beat Bolton on this game, we're guaranteed promotion. So it was actually the biggest crowd. Steve was talking about the biggest crowds in St James's. The biggest crowd I've ever been in at St James's Park in my whole life, 59,960. We twice got 59,000 during the first cup run, the semi-final and final Rangers and Doza, but not as many as 59,960. So it was the biggest crowd I've ever been in. I was in the Gallagher end. Everybody was up for it. It was going to be a fantastic occasion. In Bolton's team, they had 2 players that had been troublesome all season, and they were going to be a real threat. A winger called Francis Lee, who would go on to play for Man City, and he was a good player in that Bolton team. And also that centre forward, who was a guy called Wyn Davies. You might have heard of him. And it was Wyn Davies and John McGrath who really set the scene on the game, and John McGrath played really well against them. Although I think, if I remember rightly, George will probably clarify, I think Wyn Davies hit the bar in the first half before we scored. I don't know if you can remember that, George. But
well, I can, but I also remember that John McGrath made sure he put a knee in when Davies.
Oh yes, definitely.
And when Davies had a dead leg for the rest of the match, he could hardly walk, never mind run.
Well, that was the normal thing you did in those days, wasn't it? The centre half to kick the centre forward early on.
Good lad, man after my own heart.
That was common stuff. Anyway, so the first goal was sort of a fairly even first half hour, and then after 34 minutes, Stu's Uncle Willie scored the opening goal with a header at the Leazer's end. I was in the Gallagher end. I couldn't get a very close view, but the ball was bobbing around, and I remember there was he wasn't the biggest guy, and he sort of jumped up high and knocked it in the net from quite close in. So that put us 1-0 up at half time. So everybody was full of excitement. And then in the second half, 57 minutes, a long range shot from Jim Eiley from the just outside the penalty area, if I remember rightly, across the goal, and that put us 2-0 up, and we went on to win the game. It's the only time I've ever invaded the pitch, because everybody went on at the end of the pitch, and it's the only time I've ever been on the pitch, but just about everybody else did as well. And the players came to the director's box. There was only the one stand at the time, if you remember, and then all the players came into the director's box, and the pitch was just solid with fans. And the players chucked their shirts out, and obviously didn't reach me, but there was in the centre paddock probably got a few shirts, and that put us up into the first division, where we stayed. I think it's about 13-14 years until the demise that we've often talked about in the post-Gordon Lee, Richard Dennis era. Just another point about that time. They talk about overcrowding of matches that goes on these days. That game was on a Friday afternoon, Good Friday. We went down to play Crystal Palace on the Saturday, which I think finished. We might have even lost, or might have been a draw. Again, George might remind me on that. And then we played Bolton again on the Easter Monday. So we had 3 games in 4 days, and that was quite common to play every day over the Easter weekend. There would have been hell on now playing that many games. And
same at Christmas.
Yeah. Boxing Day, and they used to play Christmas Day as well, George. I think, didn't they? Often. So that was. We ended up winning the league that year. Just Pip and Northampton and Bolton stayed in the second division. We went up. So that's my second game, and happier days to what to follow for a few years, including the Fairs Cup.
Great stuff as always, lads. Great recollections and some great stories. As always, we finish off the programme by knocking up some celebrity fans and then finding the players that played for both teams, and the lads have to guess who these people are. So we will start with this celebrity fan.
Amir Khan.
Amir Khan, the boxer.
Stu Francis.
Stu Francis.
Ooh, I could crush it, great.
Rip a tissue.
Yeah,
Cracker Jack.
I think that he's a cracker jack. Yeah, I think this is the first time that these fans are actually genuine fans, by the way.
Yeah.
Paddy
McGuinness.
Paddy McGuinness. Peter Kay eating a Solero there. Other brands are available.
Vernon
Kay.
Vernon Kay, no relation to Peter Kay, but yes, Vernon Kay. And that's it, guys. I probably one or two others, but they are the genuine ones. So there is, though, a lot of players who played for both teams, managers included. So see how you do with this little picture board.
Sammy Amiobi.
Sammy.
Kevin Nolan.
Kevin Nolan.
Sam Allardyce.
Ooh.
It's the most Mike Bassett photo I could find of him.
Yeah.
Perfect, that.
Danny Guthrie.
Danny Gosling.
Danny Guthrie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sammy Lee.
Sammy Lee, of course, was Sam Allardyce's assistant.
Speedo, isn't it?
Scott Sellers.
Scott Sellers.
Alan Thompson.
Yeah.
Robbie Elliott.
Correct. Robbie Elliott.
Neil MacDonald.
Spotty to his friends.
Hi, Spotty.
Speedo.
Steve Howie.
Steve Howie, isn't it? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve Howie.
Steve Howie.
Les Ferdinand.
Abdi
Fai.
Yeah.
Gary Megson.
Andy O'Brien, of course. And last but by no means least,
Alan Gowland.
Okay, so guys, over to you. I think we'll go with Steve Wilkinson first this week. Right. Give us your 1 to 11 and your manager.
Well, those players you showed there didn't include a goalkeeper, and I think
deliberately because I knew it was difficult, and I wanted to know whether you always seem to struggle with keepers when John Burridge isn't available. So I thought, let's see how the lads do. I deliberately didn't name the one keeper I found.
Quite a few keepers, a few games since we've had John Burridge. Tommy Wright seems to be the only one I could find was a goalkeeper. So that's who's in goal for me. Fitting in with what George said earlier, I had to avoid playing Glenn Keeley at the back, so I was struggling for defenders actually. So, but I had Robbie Elliott playing. I put him in right back. Steve Howie and Neil MacDonald, and I put Scott Sellers in left back. I can't remember whether he ever played there, but he's left-sided anyway. Midfield, Kevin Nolan, Gary Speed, and Peter Beardsley also was involved with Bolton at some stage.
Correct.
So that was my midfield. And up front, I've gone for a bit of nostalgia. I've got Les Ferdinand in there, but I've also got Ron McGarry and Wyn Davies. and up front with that forward line. Manager, I didn't want to pick Sam somehow, and it seems as though player I mentioned earlier on, Stan Anderson was once manager at Bolton, so I'm going to put him as my manager because he would have been a good manager at Newcastle, I'm sure.
Great stuff. Fantastic. Okay, Mitch, over to you.
The goalkeeper I've got in is a lad called Jake Turner, who's at the club at the minute. He's a young kid. We signed him a couple of years ago.
Good
so
shout.
He was the only keeper I could find. And then my back four is right back Neil McDonald and left back Robbie Elliott. Then I've got Steve Howie and Andy O'Brien in the centre. Then I've got a midfield diamond anchored by Dietmar Hamann. And then in front of him, Scott Sellers and Gary Speed, two of my favourite left-footed midfielders in Newcastle United. Then I've got Kevin Nolan playing at the tip of the diamond. And I've got him playing off of Wyn Davies and Alan Gowland up front. And choosing between Sam Allardyce and Gary Megson is like choosing between a colonoscopy and a prostate exam. So I'd rather have neither. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Well, you could have gone for Gary Speed, player manager.
Didn't think about that one. There you go, you see. Think outside the box.
Think outside the box, just like he
Neil
did.
McDonald was a coach there, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. Oh, Sammy Lee, you could have got away with that. Steve Hasty.
Right, I picked Turner in goal only because Mitch told us about them. So that's cheating away, but I had to pick them.
At least you were honest, because you could have changed it in between there. You could have gone, oh, Tommy Wright, that's who I was going to have.
But I did go for Turner in goal. Two fullbacks, I went for Robbie Elliott on the left and Neil McDonald on the right. I thought Neil McDonald was a great young player that we had, and he went to Everton at that particular time in the early 80s. But I did think he was going to be an absolute superstar for us. Disappointed when he left. I've got my Steve Howie at the back in the centre alongside Andy O'Brien, because I liked Andy O'Brien. I thought he was a great player. Entertaining anyway, put it that way. Diddy Hamann holding in the midfield with Nolan on one side and Speedo on the other. And at the tip of the diamond, I went for Peter Beardsley. And up front, I went for Les Ferdinand and I went for Michael Bridges. Now, the reason I went for Michael Bridges is he was in the Strawberry just before the lockdown. And I think I might have told you before that he was showing a lad the photographs around the top of the wall in the Strawberry. And my mate said, "You'll not find your picture up there, mind." And of course, he said, "Why not?" He goes, "Well, your picture's in the bog." So anyway, he come back after going to the toilet, and he come back and he tapped me mate on the shoulder and goes, "I've been at the bog and there's no sign of me photograph in there either." And he said, "I didn't say it was in the gents, it's in the ladies." And of course, his mate just took the mick out of him. I actually bumped into him at a reserve game a couple of days later, tapped him on the shoulder, and he went, "Oh no, not you from the Strawberry again." So purely for sense of humour, but I honestly did think that at his time at Leeds and his time at Sunderland, and you can't really count his time at Newcastle, but I did think that Michael Bridges was an absolute great footballer, and I think with that formation alongside Les Ferdinand with Peter Beardsley, I think it would have looked like a decent forward line. I couldn't pick Sam Allardyce. And to be perfectly honest, I couldn't stand the screaming and histrionics of Gary Megson on the touchline either as a manager. So I went for Stan Anderson.
Good stuff. Okay, Stu.
Well, I didn't ask Mitch this week for any help. I was very proud of myself.
No, you didn't.
You
didn't.
And I was going to take credit for the Jake Turner bit, but it was actually Liam Kennedy who helped us with that, because I had to Google keepers and there was a piece of the Shields Gazette about it. So I thought, I hope this lad's a keeper, and he was. So I got Jake Turner in goal. And the 10 outfield players, you could have picked two decent teams out of them. You know, there was playing for both. But I ended up going with Scotty McDonald right back, Robbie Elliott left back, Howie and Amdi Faye in the middle, then a four in midfield. I stuck Gowland, I know he's a four, but I put him on the right wing to complement Scott Sellers on the left, with Gary Speed and Kevin Nolan in the middle. And then I had Beardsley and Les Ferdinand up front. Now, I couldn't take Sam Allardyce either, so I didn't know about Stan Anderson, so I picked Gary Megson. And I thought he had to be good at something, and I'm sure he won a Manager of the Month award at some stage of Bolton. But I picked Megson over Allardyce. That's why. That's the only reason.
Brilliant. Okay, George. Last but by no means least, over to you, mate.
Straightforward as usual from me. 1 to 11. Tommy Wright in goal, Neil MacDonald, Robbie Elliott, Andy Fye, Steve Howie, Andy O'Brien, Sammy Amiobi, Peter Beardsley, Les Ferdinand, Kevin Nolan, and Scott Sellers on the left. And my manager had just decided for a curveball for all the reasons that you lads have said. Neither Megson or Allardyce would suit me, so I picked Neil Redfern, who used to be coach for those was with them. So
Good shout,
manager.
Great stuff, fantastic, lads. Great stuff as always. We'll be in touch via Messenger to find out who we're going to do next week. And don't forget, I am back tomorrow night with Super Mac. It was great as well, by the way, down at the Schooner this week with Super Mac to actually do a talk in for the first time in 17 months. So great to be down there at short notice. I'm looking forward to seeing him and Gibbo tomorrow night live at 6 o'clock. And don't forget, the Fab Four are pre-recorded again this week, but we will be on 5:30 as normal on Friday. So see you guys next week. Thanks, lads. Take care.
Bye,
everybody. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back.